mute the rest of.
There it goes. And anyone who comes in will just jump on. So thank you all for coming. Before I introduce James, I just want to make a few announcements for Essex. The first is about the Chatham show. While you're getting your painting ready for the show, at the request of the Chatham Library, they have asked us to change the date for receiving and hanging our show. So the new date is now Monday, January 31st at 1 p.m. I will be sending this out this week. And that has also pushed ahead our pre-registration date for online and mail-in. So that's changed to Wednesday, January 26th. And that gives you a few extra days. So this seems to be a constant thing that Chatham does to us. So that's number one. Number two is there are a couple seats only left for the Graham Booth Live Workshop. That is on Sunday, January 30th. It is 3 hours live online. He is extraordinary, and come do it. It's $65, which, if you know Graham Booth, it is just the buy of the year. And you could have one of those seats. And lastly, we've got some great programs coming up through the winter and into the spring online. So stay posted. Okay, so we are very lucky. We have our own James Powells, who is going to be teaching us today. He is a teacher. He has been with Parsippany High School for 23 years. And James teaches everything from painting to general art to digital photography. And today he is going to be our teacher. I hope you printed out the outline or the PowerPoint that I sent to you all earlier, the outline, so you could follow along with all the things he's saying. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to you, James. I'm going to enlarge your box. There we go.
Thank you, Margie. Greetings. It's nice to see you all. I've been your president of the organization for the last 2 years, even though we haven't been able to meet. So it's hopefully come April, we should be back into the senior center in Livingston for our first basically general meeting in person in like over 2 years. So I'm very excited for that in April, being able to finally meet you all and personally, not just online. So today we had a discussion back in July about like some of the common errors or problems with shows and people exhibiting it. And the discussion was from the executive board was, why don't we just do an online little demonstration to kind of wrap up any misconceptions or misunderstandings we've come across over the years with people trying to exhibit their paintings. So this is how this online workshop came about. So it's a little different than normally watching someone paint. I'm sorry, it's not as exciting as that, but I think it's also important. Even though it's kind of technical, it is important to kind of know, your painting's not quite done when you just sign your name to it. There's a whole process of framing it, picking out mats, and, plus the criteria for shows and the venues. So this kind of wraps up all the little tiny little details that most people kind of ignore or don't find as very exciting. I'll try to make this as exciting as possible today for you, but here we go. What I have is a little bit, I just want to go through a little, in case you don't have the outline, I have the little PowerPoint here, just to kind of show you just what I'm going to cover today, just to give you a quick overview. So let me just present my.
Okay, while you're doing that, I'm going to remind everybody to put questions in the chat box, please. We will open up at the end for general questions.
Hey, Margie, you have to give me permission.
Oh, it's not letting you go?
Yeah.
All right, see if that does it.
Okay. Here we go. Good, perfect. Oh. All right. Let me come up over here. All right, guys. All right. Basically this is, I'm going to cover up some copyright materials here. There's the little subpoints, the little bulletins, what I'm going to cover here, which we've had some debates over the years about exactly what the copyright is. So I'm going to cover that. I'm going to talk very briefly about photos. I'm very happy now that we're back to being in person, not online for our exhibits. But even still, just in case, and for other organizations, I'll do a little brief covering of about taking photographs and stuff like that, artwork. And then preparing your watercolor for exhibit. All right, and I'm going to cover these topics here for you guys. And then I'll talk a little discussion about framing, usually about our specific sizes, some of the more technical aspects. And I'll show you some examples of this stuff. All right, and there's some more. There's a lot to be covered with framing and, with our transparent show. Okay, and that's basically the demo. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because most of you have the handout for that. So let me just get out of that. So that's the kind of the brief outline for that. And let me go switch over to my other PowerPoint here, which we're going to talk about copyright. All right, this is actually the PowerPoint we use at school. Our media center teachers use this for the students to talk about copyright and intellectual property. I thought they did an excellent job in making it very precise and to the point. And that's why I kind of borrowed it off of them. Because over the years, we've had some issues over, people submitting, classwork or copies of other artists' works as their own, and we can't have that. It's got to be, your own work, photographs you took. It can't be copies of some other stuff or copyrighted material. One of the key things you need to be aware of, it does not have to have the copyright symbol on the material to be copyrighted. And I think that's one of the big misconceptions is people say, oh, I didn't see the copyrighted symbol, so it must be in public domain. No, that's a big misconception. So you got to be aware of that. Just because it doesn't have the copyright symbol does not mean it's not copyrighted. So that's kind of important.
Hold on.
When it comes to intellectual property, there's various things. There's patents, there's trade secrets, trademarks. The one we're concerned about is about copyright. So that's the one we're most concerned with here. So that's what we're going to talk about. All right, fair use. This is when it's okay to use copyright material, commentary, news reporting, criticism. So, if you're, doing a commentary on the artist's artwork, you could use that based on your critiquing their work. You're doing criticisms, fine. Teaching, it's well known throughout the history of, with artists to copy masters' work, to learn from a master about composition, technique. That's fine. That's good for yourself, but you can't take that stuff that you've used for practice or in classroom work and then submit it as your own. One of the chief things is with a masterpiece artwork or someone other artist's artwork, they've worked out all the hard stuff of composition, of what colors to use. They've done all that for you. You're just kind of replicating it. which is, you create up your own work. It's a lot harder to find something that's interesting to make a painting, to decide what's the best composition, what colors you work the best. So that's one of the reasons why we kind of force you not to copy other works of art, to encourage you to use your own photographs and stuff like that, not to pull stuff off the internet. Here's some little 4 factors to measure its fair use. I'm not going to read these. I'm just going to leave this up for the screen for you guys to take a look at. All right. Basically purpose, nature, amount, and impact. I think that's a great idea. Take a photograph, you guys, if you want to kind of memorize that if you need to. And again, just keep those 4 points in mind. Everyone good with that? I'm going to kind of move on then. Okay. All right. This is one of the most famous pieces of artworks that caused an uproar, not just in the art community, but in the legal community. Everyone, this poster of hope with Barack Obama for his 2008 presidential campaign, it was all over the place. You saw it on television, you saw it on, the internet. And this was a contemporary artist who basically came up with this image. He changed the colors. He put the word hope on there. He was selling T-shirts. He was selling posters of this. He was making a lot of money off of this. AP got wind of this. Obviously, there was no way for them not to get wind of it because it was all over everywhere. They sued the artists because it was an infringement of their copyright, their intellectual property, because it was based on a AP photographer. The photographer worked for AP Press, so they were his bosses. So even though he took this photograph of Barack Obama before he was a household name or a celebrity. So what he did is the artist took that photograph, based his poster off that photograph. If you notice, the head tilt's the same, the angle's the same. The only thing he really did was he changed the colors and put the word hope on the bottom. The artist was claiming that he changed it up enough that it didn't violate the copyrights. There's another misconception out there, kind of as an urban myth. Some people feel that, if I make 6 or 7 significant changes to the original artwork, that counts as something original. No, it doesn't. That's still an infringement of this person's copyright. The artist was sued by AP. It went to court. The courts never ruled on this. And this was a big issue because I think a lot of artists in the legal community kind of wish the courts did rule on this so that they could just write it in stone. They end up settling out of court. The artist has to pay a royalty fee to AP for every piece he sells with this image on. So just be aware that, I like this photograph of this celebrity or this person, or it can be a celebrity. It could be like a landscape. I think this is nice, and I do a painting. I'll say I'll just change the colors a little bit. It's still a violation of their intellectual property. There's another one, which involved a high school 14-year-old girl. The art teacher, she did a copy of a photo she found online. She did a reproduction of that photo, this contemporary artist's artwork. The art teacher loved it, posted on the school district website. The artist saw it there, and he sued a 14-year-old girl for violating his copyright. Yeah, well, eventually what happened, it made the press, and the artist backed down because, they're like, everyone kind of backlash about him suing a 14-year-old girl. So personally, if a freshman in high school wanted to copy my artwork, I'd feel pretty, flattered by it, And she wasn't selling anything. She wasn't making money off of it. It was simply posted online, and she still got a lawsuit over that. So there's certain legal aspects of this. So, when our exhibition chairperson says something, this is a violation of copyrights. I mean, it's also trying to protect our organizational legally and you, okay? So we're not just being big meanies. It's, people do get sued over this stuff. And it kind of, so, and also, we're even though we're a teaching organization, we're also a professional organization. And, it's fine to copy other works and be inspired by stuff, but you can't submit that to exhibit. Any questions about that? Well, pretty good about that. Okay. I hope I kind of clarified that a little bit.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
And again, here's the two images. And you could tell. And here's a case where, the photographer worked out all the composition. He decided to crop in nice and closely. And if the artist, he's using similar colors as the original photos in there. The blue, red, white, and blue, the black, or in this case, the guy's using a darker bluish gray. But a lot of those composition problems were resolved by the photographer, not the artist. All right. Now, my biggest takeaway with this, it should inspire you, you shouldn't be duplicating it. It's fine to be inspired. Hey, I like that. I'm going to do my own landscape and find something similar, but you can't be copying in any form or way. Okay. Any questions about the copyright stuff?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Now, let me talk about taking photos. So I'm going to switch over to my overhead camera. All right. Taking photographs. All right. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I do think it's kind of important. Because even, some people who exhibit for want to become an exhibiting member, you still got to submit sometimes for stuff. All right. I got my piece of artwork. One of the first things you need to do is take the photograph of your artwork before you get it framed, okay? Or if you do have a frame, you're going to have to pop it out of the frame to take the photograph. Because with glass or plexiglass, you're going to get a reflection on it. So preferably, sometimes it might be in a good habit to take the photograph when you're done with it. Take the photograph then, so you have it. And then if you decided to ship it off to a framer to have it framed, you already got the photograph. Few things. Don't photograph the picture vertically. Lay it flat down on the ground. All right. It could be on a floor. It could be on a table. If it's something larger, just put it on the floor. All right. If it's something a smaller piece, put it on the table. It's a lot easier submitting it when it's perfectly flat, not vertical, but laying flat horizontal. Other thing when you're taking a photograph, probably the best thing to use is your phone. We all have smartphones. All right. So one of the best things you could do is just come over here. Now, if you look here, I can't move the light because I need to keep it light. But if you notice with the photograph, there's a shadow here, okay? And we don't want to make sure you don't get your shadow of yourself on the photo or of your phone. I would recommend to do this outside on a nice sunny day. If you can't do it outside, inside kind of works good. Sometimes if you do it on your dining room table, you have to put it underneath your chandelier, or usually kitchens are very well lit with lots of lights all over the place. So it's not just one light source. So you want to be careful you don't get the shadow. So if you look here, I got my shadow there. If you look on my phone, I have the shadow of the phone on the picture. So we want to kind of prevent that. So ideally, outside noon time where the sun's overhead, you don't get a lot of, you don't have to worry about shadows. The other thing is don't tilt your phone where it's at an angle. You want to try to get right over it, all right, the image. So you don't want the phone tilted at an angle so that when you take the photograph, it's slightly, the image is distorted, all right? So you want to just keep it flat. You want to make sure you try to get the edges of your painting as, best as possible, like that. You want to crop out as much as the bottom. If you get some bottom, some of this stuff in there, you can always use your set software editing on your phone. If you're not sure how to use that, you can always just Google, whether it's you have an iPhone, you can Google it, or if you have an Android, you can always Google how do I edit a phone, and you'll pull up tons of YouTube videos on that. But just make sure you don't tilt it, all right, and you don't get the shadow in there, and try to get as much of the background out as possible. If you do get a little bunch of the background there, just kind of crop it out, all right, and you want to just kind of make sure it's nice and even. You go, boom. Now, if I look at mine, you know, it's a little crooked here, all right. I put this down, and I got the shadow in there. But you can simply just come in here, and I can just simply, I can straighten it. I can also crop in a little bit and kind of get that fixed. And we're done. Okay. Also, be careful it's the correct orientation. If you email it to us, don't email to us if it's supposed to be horizontal. Don't email us like this where it's vertical. All right. So just make sure you kind of rotate it and make sure it's sent the correct orientation. All right. And so that's the basics with just kind of the photography. If it comes out a little dark or a little light, don't over edit it. Just if it's a little dark, you can the software on your phone, you can lighten it a little bit, or if it's a little too light, you can darken it. Just don't go in there and radically change the colors or anything like that. You want to keep it as close to what the original is. Any questions about the taking photographs? You guys good with that? Okay.
Yep.
All right. That's the basics to the photographs. All right. Now. All right. When you're taking photographs for, you know, getting your work ready for an exhibit, there's a few things you want to keep in mind. You know, one of the things is you get your lovely, you know, you get the email saying that, oh, you know, we get the paperwork, we get the email, we printed it out. Just guys, just make sure you kind of read the directions carefully. All right. I know we all live busy lives, and you know, sometimes you kind of cruise through it real quickly or skim it. Just kind of be careful with stuff, especially look for stuff that's especially in bold or underlined, that you make sure that you read that, special attention to that, because that's certain criteria. Usually, generally, the criteria is the same for everything. But one of the things we need to be aware of with criteria is also labeling. All right. Just one of the common mistakes with labeling is just make sure you use the same phone number for one. Sometimes someone will put their cell phone number on one, their home phone number on other. Just make sure the labels are correctly labeled and you get the sizes correct, you know, width and height. Not for sale, just, you know, just to clarify that, NFS means not for sale. So if you don't want to sell it, it's your favorite painting you did of your niece or your grandchild. Obviously, you don't necessarily want to sell that because it's very personal to you. Just put down not for sale on that. Okay. That's pretty standard with that. Anything else with this? Questions with that? All pretty good with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Just, James, just please reemphasize the importance of reading the prospectus.
Yeah, you guys, you know, one of the things is, you know, also, you know, John makes a good point, you know, just be aware of the dates, you know, most of the time these dates are set in stone. I mean, this is one of the few times this show coming up that they got changed by the venue, not us. But usually these are set in stone. So just be aware of that. And like I said, just read through the whole thing. And it's usually pretty precise and to the point, you know, receiving times, you know, please come, you know, don't show up like, you know, a half an hour late to, you know, when receiving or especially picking up stuff. All right. because it's nothing worse than, someone forgets to pick up their painting and we got to haul back 5 or 6 paintings and then store them at our house. So please just be aware of dates and times and just check that real carefully. And as always, if you have any questions, just feel free to call us or ask or email us. We'd be more than happy to clarify anything. And again, and there's not a lot, it looks like a lot of material here, but it's really not that bad. Okay. John, does that
Yeah, I would also, as a favor to myself and a few others who are working on these exhibits every now and then, especially for Marion, the prospectus goes out via email. And so occasionally people will say, I didn't get mine, or I can't find it, and so forth. We just request that you search back a week or two on your emails, and you'll bet you'll find it, because then it just puts a burden on us to go, find it and send it out again. So just, take a little extra time before you ask us if you didn't receive it, and check to see in fact you really did, and just kind of got lazy. I'm sorry to say, but please just look for it before you comment on whether or not you got it. Thanks.
The other thing is, guys, just make sure your labels are placed in the right position, attached lower right, attached to upper right, upper back. Just make sure it sometimes you gotta understand, we're getting, we could have 30, 40 paintings in, and we're just trying to go through. We're given a certain amount of time to check you guys in and hang the show. Because the venue could be using that space for something else scheduled. So, if you put the label in the wrong spot, we got to look for it, then pull it off, put it in the right spot. So it kind of helps speed up the process, because we are given time constraints to kind of check you all in, get the work hung, and kind of clean up and get out of there before the space is being used for other purposes. So just double check and make sure the labels are also placed in the right spot. The one in the back is, you got to adhere it really well. The label in the front is a temporary one, which we pull off and use for our own records. But make sure the one in the back is adhered very well. Just use like tape all 4 sides. Just don't put a little tape there where it accidentally will fall off or get misplaced. Make sure it's adhered real well. All right, I know that wasn't the most exciting thing in the world to talk about, but it is kind of important for our own purpose. All right, when it comes to framing artwork, obviously everything's got to be, professionally matted, looks good, and I think most people here will get their mats and stuff. So that is important to do. Just make sure, but there's some misconceptions with stuff. Just be aware with framing, it is small pieces of artwork can go under glass. Larger stuff, anything larger works, full sheets of watercolor paper have to go under plexiglass. So keep that in mind. If you're working with a full sheet of watercolor, it's very large. You wanted to put that underneath plexiglass. If you're working a little smaller, glass is okay. That's fine. A few things you need to be aware of when you're doing with the framing. All right. Besides it looking professional, one of the things you want to make sure is that your mats are white. What I mean by mats are white. All right, you go to the frame store. All right, I have several sheets of paper here. All right, this stuff's all drawing paper. The manufacturer claims they're all variations of white. If you look, this down here is my background is white watercolor paper. If you look here, this has kind of got a little tan to it. This has actually got a little bluish gray tint to it. This is pure white. This one's a little more of like an antique white. All right. What we're looking for is you want something as white as basically your watercolor paper, okay? These other three sheets, your work would be ejected. And like I said, it's a quick fix to look. Just take a sheet of pure watercolor paper, white paper. And if you look, this is definitely darker than that. This would not be acceptable, all right, for a show. And unfortunately, over the years, we've had to, a person brings in a beautiful painting and it's like, yeah, sorry, but it's too tan, And one of the reasons why we require this is when we hang a whole show, we want something to kind of unify the whole show. So that's not just, if we had like, you had a pink mat and it's being hung next to someone who has like a bright green mat, it wouldn't look as nice overall for the show. So we require everything white so that it all kind of unifies the whole show. So even though we're working in different styles, we have different techniques, we favor certain palette colors over other ones, that white mat will unify all the pieces in the show. So when someone looks in there, it all kind of flows and gets unified and looks good as a overall. So, our exhibition chairperson, one of the tough things that you need to do is to hang the show so it looks appealing overall, not just your work, but it works, all the pieces work together as a whole. So that's one of the reasons why we're sticklers with this, is because it makes the show overall. And if the show overall looks great and performs, ultimately it makes all our artwork look better and looks great. So you make sure it's white, all right? These don't cut it. Too tan, way too tan. This has got, it's a bluish gray. This wouldn't work either, okay? So these wouldn't work. And if you look against my background with watercolor paper, they stand out, okay? They're too dark, okay? Where this here, which is a pure white, it's almost the same. It blends in, okay? So keep that in mind with the mats. It breaks our hearts when we have to tell someone, yeah, you got another piece at home, you can't use that. Any questions with the mats? And the reason why we're kind of sticklers with that. All right, now, what is okay? You have your nice little white mat. You can have an accent mat, which is the black here. You can do a little accent color. So if you want to pull out, you got a nice little painting here, and you want to pull out like a certain color in there, just a little accent, that inner mat here, you can put a little accent to bring a little color in, okay? That's fine. The bigger mat out here has to be white, okay? So this is okay. This little color here, if you want to add a little color, that's okay. So you can do what you would call a double mat, all right? That's okay.
James, is there a size for the inner mat?
As far as usually what I suggest for, it also depends on the work. I usually say the inner mat shouldn't be more than a quarter of an inch. All right. And I wouldn't do it, you could have it as small as 1/8 of an inch, but I wouldn't go beyond a quarter of an inch, because then it starts detracting a little bit. You could go a little larger if you're doing a full sheet of watercolor paper, because the frame's so big. But generally for most of us, what the size we're working in, I wouldn't go any larger than a quarter of an inch. Okay, which this is here.
Yeah, makes sense.
And a quarter inch, overall size wise, kind of looks good. It doesn't dominate and distract, but just gives you that little bit of accent. Just think of it as trim in your house. You paint your room. You have, you might have white walls in your room, but you do a trim in an accent color. What we're saying is don't make your walls, that accent color and then white as trim. We're asking for the reverse. So just a little accent, a little trim. Think of it as trim to your baseboard and around the windows. Okay, just a little accent. That's fine. All right, but the outer mat's got to be white. Any questions with that? That kind of clarify that? All right. Yeah, I know that's kind of gotten confusing over the years. I just want to clarify that. All right. Now, what we're going to talk about also is the next step. Now, I talked about the front of the frame. we got to talk a little bit about the back of the frame. Okay. All right. Sawtooth. We can't have that. All right. Most venues, that's if you stick the old fashioned nail in the wall kind of deal. All right. Needless to say, I don't know any venue that would ever allow us to put a nail in their walls. All right. So the sawtooth can't be used. They're big no-nos. All right. Everything's got to be wired frame like this. All right. So the wire frame is good. Some of the key things with the wire frame, I know most of you have your stuff professionally framed. Just before you leave the frame shop, just kind of make sure, you know, the wire is a couple inches below the top here. Just give it a little pull to make sure it holds. All right. So I'm putting a little pressure on there. The knots are holding. It looks good. All right. And it should be with some tension on it. It should be about 2 inches below the top of the frame. Okay. So just make sure. Most framers know that, but just kind of double check it. We've had some, it doesn't happen often, but we've had a few times where the wire is broken, the knot slipped, which is not good. And we don't have wire on hand. We don't have the tools to kind of tie it and cut the wire. So, you know, unfortunately, then we're calling the person saying, hey, unfortunately, you got to pick up your artwork because the wire broke. So just double check that, especially before you leave the frame shop. So if there's an issue, you can just tell the framer to go fix it. The other issue here is, if you look on this side, you know, there's knot tied. We require, and most venues require, that you put some tape on there. The reason for that is, if you look here, you got the frayed wires here on the end. I know it's a little hard to see. You got a little frayed wires. You know, these things, if you get them stuck in your finger, they hurt. And sometimes they break off, and then you got to try to get it out. It's like getting, like, you know, the stickers from a sticker bush or a splinter in there. So you want to wrap that with tape. Also, this stuff up against the wall will sometimes create marks when we're trying to hang it, and the venues are not too happy with us. So you can just use simply some painter's tape, works best, or masking tape, or if you got duct tape, you can use that. Just take a little bit of that. Just take it, just wrap it around that, so we don't get stuck with the frayed wires. The venue is usually happy because their walls don't get marked up, and we just put in there some tape, and sometimes I'll put another one just on top of it, just a little one, just to kind of keep it all nice and tight. It doesn't have to be real tight, just so it doesn't slip. Give it a nice little squeeze so it's nice and adhered, and boom. Real simple. You can do that. Takes you, you know, less than a minute to kind of wrap them. So this would be acceptable, permittable, because you got it all taped up. All right. Any questions about that aspect with the tape? Remember, the sawtooth hangers are no, we can't accept that. It's got to be a wire. We're all good with that? You know, pretty simple, straightforward on that. So just be aware of that. And I think, like I said, just give it a nice little, and that's nice and tight, looks good. All right, so that's that. Now, the transparency show. Just a little clarifications with the transparency show. Put a little piece of artwork there. Some clarifications with that. Because this is not like a regular show, the transparency show, there's some, you know, different criteria. I just want to make you aware of that criteria. You can't be paper. Just be aware, it's got to be a watercolor paper, a known brand of watercolor paper, like Arches is fine. And all this is laid out in the perspective. You can't be using rice paper. You can't be using handmade paper. Illustration boards, a big no-no. But if you stick to one of the known brands like Arches, you're fine, okay, with watercolor paper. All right. Also, just be aware, you know, for example, here, if with this painting here, if I went back and used white paint on the highlights on this, this would be ineligible for the show. or if I went back with a little white color pencil and put those highlights in this, this would be ineligible for the show. So I could, or I went back with a little gouache and put the highlights in, this would be ineligible for the show. But if I went in there and you see the white highlights or the white of the paper, that would be eligible for the show, for the transparency show. That would be okay. But if I went in there, like I said, with gouache, white paint, like white acrylic, color pencil or anything like that, that would make it ineligible. You know, so we're basically looking for the pure watercolor, back to the traditional, you know, watercolor. The whites you see is the white of the paper, and you're not going in there and you know touching things up with a little color pencil, a little gouache, a little acrylic. All right, so just keep that in mind for that. The other thing is also be aware of, you know, every once in a while, it doesn't happen often, but sometimes, you know, the venue will say maybe an artwork is not acceptable for a viewing. You know, so if you did some, you know, so don't get necessarily mad at us. Sometimes the venue, for whatever reason, might ask us to decline something, and then we have the difficult phone call and calling someone or telling someone about that. So just be aware. Don't beat up on our people working the show or exposition chairperson, because it's not necessarily coming from us, it's coming from the venue. And since we're guests there at the venue, we have to play by their rules, and because we're using their facilities, so they kind of make the rules, so we have to abide by them. So please don't get mad with her. We're all volunteers for this. Okay. And
James, a
again,
question.
sure.
Is it, you can use 0% of an opaque or gouache, or is it that it is mostly transparent paint?
My understanding is if there's 0, you can't use any of it.
Okay,
Marion, am I correct? She there? Okay.
oh, wait, Marion might be muted. Hold
Yeah,
on,
no,
I will unmute Marion.
that's correct, because once you open the door for any opaque, the question now becomes, well, how much is enough, or how much is too much? And in the past, we have had, we might have even allowed the painting to be in the show, but we transport the Transparent Watercolor Society of America, if anyone is going to be a stickler for details like that, they are. And so to avoid confusion and at the end where, you know, I can see you got a little white gouache in there, it's a no-no. However, Chinese white, when you can tell the difference between that and the other, I don't know, but Chinese white has always sort of been considered, in quotes, sort of a transparent product, say like cerulean blue, for example, which is opaque, but is a transparent watercolor. I mean, it's okay. So Chinese white, I think in the past, and maybe Marion can confirm this, we've accepted that if Chinese white is used, but you know, we're not going to do a spectral analysis to be sure. So it's going to be on the person's honor to say, yeah, that was Chinese white and not opaque gouache or something like that. So I probably froze a wrinkle.
Let me comment a minute, John.
Sure, go ahead.
No Chinese white, no gouache, no acrylic.
Okay.
You know, there have been times when someone has brought a beautiful painting and we can obviously see that, you know, it's not just a pinprick in an eyeball of white, but considerable use of a white. And while we've allowed that to be hung, that was excluded from the judging. So if you look back at some of our other shows and you've seen, oh, well, so-and-so had her painting in, it may have been hung there, but it was ineligible for an award.
Yeah,
So kindly keep that in mind.
So basically, we're going back to the roots of watercolor, where the white is the white of the paper, you know,
Right.
very traditional.
Yeah.
You know, I know a lot of contemporary watercolors will use, they kind of border on mixed media where you go in there and, like I says, I use this as an example because of all the chrome here. This is a print of one of my paintings. With the white you see here is the white of the paper. So if you're going to do something like that, you got to make sure it's the white of the paper. You can't go back and add a little white paint or a little color pencil to bring out those highlights you might have lost in the process of painting. So it's got to be pure. Okay. This show is going back to the roots of watercolor. Okay. So just remember, the white you see is supposed to be the white of the paper. You can't be adding white or in any form, acrylic, gouache, color pencil, or anything like that. Okay. Just pure watercolor. All right. Any questions with that? And again, ultimately, the expedition chairperson has, final say in this. Okay. And the venue. So please don't argue with them. We're all, like I said, we're all volunteers. We're not deliberately trying to harass or bust anyone's chops, but it does reach a point. If we bend the rules for someone else, then it creates other issues because other people are like, why is it okay for them but not for me?
Yeah.
So just be aware of that. We're just trying to make it fair for everyone. Okay. Is there any questions in general? We'll open this section up for questions.
Must have been a good presentation. Nobody's got any questions.
I hope this was helpful for all of you. Let me switch cameras here real quick.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Joan Park.
Yes, Joan, what's up?
Yeah, sorry, I was having trouble unmuting there. I have a question about the framing.
Okay.
What about the frame itself? Does it need to be a certain color or a certain look?
Usually, no, we usually don't have an issue with the framing. We usually have, most people I think nowadays end up putting the stuff. This is a wood frame. It should look professional. I think most people nowadays kind of put them in the metal frames, or wood like this. They're a little bit more contemporary. And usually, no, there's usually not an issue with that. If you came across with a frame that was like huge and took up a lot of space, we might have to ask you to pick something out. But usually we've never had any issues with the frame. Just make sure
Are they usually simple, slim frames, or it doesn't matter?
What for me personally, what I might suggest is, especially if you're looking to sell the frame, keep it simple, keep it formal, because if someone's looking for to purchase your painting, you don't know what decor they're going to stick it in.
Okay.
And that would actually help sell your painting, because if you put it in a more ornate or frame, someone say, oh, I like the painting, but that frame doesn't work for my decor. But if you keep it like a simple wood frame or a simple metal frame, that goes with almost any decor and basically enhances your chances of selling your painting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to add to that, choose your frame to complement your painting.
Yeah.
So that's real. And if you go to a professional framer, generally they have various samples, and they can hold them against your painting. Excuse me. So really do it to complement your paint.
Okay, thank you.
And
Yeah,
can I add
that's
one more point to that is when you are measuring the painting size, it will be the framed size when they'll ask for a frame size or an unframed size. So the bigger the mat and the bigger the frame, you are adding inches to your painting. So you don't want to go bigger than is allowed for the show.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things you want to be aware of, it's not the image size of the actual piece of artwork. It's the overall, when we ask for size, it's the overall image of the frame. So if you have a bigger frame that sticks out further, then that's going to count to your overall size. So it works to your advantage to, not have a big fancy frame to it. Okay. So remember, it's when we're measuring, we're measuring, this size, not the actual work. It's the actual work, mat, and the size of the frame. So we're looking at, this dimension here. When we ask what the size of the piece is, it's the overall. So you're measuring from end of the frame to the end of the frame. Okay. You're not measuring from the inside of the frame. You're not measuring from the piece of artwork. You're measuring from here to here.
And currently, the frame size is no smaller than 14 inches in any direction and no larger than 40 inches in any direction. And some venues, for example, the Mayo Theater, has reduced their gallery size. And so therefore, we generally would prefer smaller size paintings, 20 by 24, 16 by 20, etc., 11 by 14. Simply so that we can accommodate more members to exhibit. If we had, 4 or 5 40-inch paintings, then that means there could very well be, 5 or 8 people who couldn't exhibit. So, generally, there's usually some kind of a reason behind everything we ask you to consider in submitting. So, and I do want to compliment James. Thank you very much. I think that to all of our new exhibiting members, I think this should be saved and sent to them as when they become new members so that they have a good idea about what some of our requirements are.
Yeah,
So thank you very
excellent
much,
idea.
James. You did a
Yeah.
great job. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. I hope this helped clarify some misconceptions, misunderstandings, and hopefully this, clarifies so there's no issues later on down the line. Because ultimately, we all want you to be successful, and it breaks his heart that, when we have to kind of turn someone away because of they got their mat's not white, it's, buff or, antique white, or taupe, which are all technically white, but not the white we're looking for. Like I said, just compare it to a white sheet of watercolor paper, and it, that's pure white. If there's no other questions, I hope this was helpful.
It was great.
Yes.
It was a
Thank you.
great exhibit, James. You can unmute now and ask any questions you want, guys.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jackie.
No,
This is
Oh,
Wendy Kovacs. I'm coming
Wendy.
through with OCAG.
Oh, Wendy, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hi. You say the pure white paper, and I know that I bought Arches in pure brilliant white and then some that's not white. What if I'm painting on paper that's the not bright white paper?
It's usually, even the non-bright white paper, it's usually pretty white. This is not, my example I showed you is not bright white paper. It's just regular Arches paper. That has a tendency to be a little on the white side. It might be like a shade or two darker, but it's pretty much white.
Okay. And you
yeah.
want the match should match the color of the white of the paper.
I say that as using as a rough rule of thumb when in
Okay.
doubt. I'm not saying it's set in stone, but I'm just saying this is a very easy criteria if you're not sure. Just kind of match it up.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
it can be. I realize it can be a little the manufacturer's labeling stuff white that's not necessarily pure white.
Right.
So I'm just trying to use that as kind of a rough guide. Like you're going to art, you're at the frame shop. Oh, I need a pure white, or you take a little scrap piece of watercolor paper with you and just kind of like, okay, compare it.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Speaking of paper, somebody asked, did anybody get their sample pack from the Hahnemühle paper? And has anyone painted on it?
No, I haven't received mine.
You haven't yet?
No.
you requested it, then what? Have you requested it?
Oh, yes.
You requested it? Joan, do you say you got it?
I got it, but I haven't tried it yet.
I just started painting on mine.
Yeah. I had two questions.
Go ahead, Joan.
Can you ever use illustration board or like aqua board? Or does that take it out of transparent?
Well, you can't use it for the transparency show, but you can use it for other shows. It's
Okay.
just our transparent show. I personally, I do a lot of watercolors on illustration board. I love this stuff.
I
You know,
like it too.
I love it. I mean, Arches makes like they bought the one manufacturer. This stuff is wonderful. A few years back, I did a demo for the club about using illustration board. But it's just you just can't use it for this upcoming show in January for the transparency show. We want to keep it traditional.
I get it. And
Yeah.
then Margie, I think I sent in for the Graham booth, but I haven't gotten a check. The check wasn't cashed. Did I send
No,
in?
no,
or-
the cash, it's not cashed until the day of the workshop. When
Okay.
I passed, yes, you're
So I
on.
probably did do
Yeah,
it. Okay.
you'll be hearing soon because we have to get the
Thanks.
material list out. I'll be writing to Graham in this week.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Exactly.
I have a question. It's probably stupid, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. So when we talk about different paints, some of the watercolor paints are transparent and some of them are permanent. Do we have to differentiate which ones we use in the painting for this show? I mean, permanent colors cannot be used in a transparency painting.
No, we don't ask which brand or which paint you used. I think it would be fairly obvious, So all we are saying is use a transparent watercolor, and usually it's marked on the tube. And
So like permanent rose, something like that, you couldn't use because it's a permanent color.
now you're getting really technical with me, and I don't know.
No, you could
I
use
mean, I'm just
permanent
saying.
rose. That has to do with the staining quality of the paint.
Right.
It's still transparent. It's really what James said. It's thick, opaque colors like the cadmium colors or
Mhm.
the gouaches, or the chalkier looking colors. That's what you have to stay away from for the transparent shows, but it has
Okay.
nothing to do with the staining quality.
Okay. So no
Thank you,
cap.
Margie.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
So maybe I'd just like to take a quick survey right now. How many people are in favor of keeping a transparency show? Okay. This is the last one, I guess.
Any
We
other
also-
questions?
We've
No.
also done a show in the past that was anything on paper. And that gives you a chance to use anything on paper.
Right.
We may do that again for our September show.
Yeah.
During the COVID shutdown, when we were doing our online shows, we did have one called Anything Goes, and it was any medium on anything except bark, I guess. So it was really, it was like no collage kind of thing, but it was really, feel free to use any of your graphites, your pastels, your oils, whatever you wanted to submit. But again, following the guidelines for size, matting, and family viewing. But and also with our shows, we do come up with a theme or a title, which I think everybody just ignores. But it's helpful when we try and do publicity that if we have a title to a show, that it piques people's interest. They come, and quite frankly, in the Chatham show, we have done sales. I mean, in our last show, we sold the first day. We sold a large painting. So, if you're willing to show, you're willing to sell your art, try and follow the prospectus and come on out and participate. And again,
I don't want to be the ogre, but there are times when I have to make some very, very difficult decisions, and it's not an easy job. So anybody who's interested in being exhibit chair, please let me know, and you can sign right up right now. And our next show is the Mayo Theater. The prospectus will go out mid-March, and we are scheduled in for May 17th to June something or other. But so keep that in mind.
Marion was joking, I hope, but she brought up a good
No.
point. We do have a few positions open for the board. And the board is just a bunch of nice people. It's not terribly time consuming. We meet online. If you're at all interested, please talk to me or James or Marion and come join us. Sorry, I had to put that in.
Mm,
Okay.
nicely said.
So, well, thank you all very much for attending and your contributions and your good questions, and let's paint.
Absolutely. And we've got a great show, a great program for February. We're going to see James again. He's going to talk about how to paint your pets.
Oh,
And in March, Pat Dews is going to be online. I don't know if you know Pat's work. It's incredible. She does a lot of abstract stuff. She's a lot of fun. And April is Mick Andrews. So we've got some great programs coming up.
Hey, Margie, if you, I'll just show here, February, I'm gonna teach you how to do this.
all right.
All right,
Wow.
so February, I'm gonna show you how to do, how to paint fur in watercolor.
Excellent. I'm looking
Okay,
forward
so
to
guys, so just be aware, February, that's when we're gonna end up, and I hope to be a really excellent, demo.
And if you don't have a pet, some of the strokes that he will share about doing fur, you could use for hair and portraits, or even some of those lovely blowing grasses in the wind. So everybody will learn something.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Looking forward. to
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Take
Thank you,
care.
James. Very nice program.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.